Hola a todos and welcome to online class. Our objective for today is to learn how to use Spanish nouns and articles. One way to learn nouns and articles in Spanish is to compare them with what we already know about English nouns and articles. So what's the biggest difference that you see between English and Spanish nouns and articles? You can start by looking at the examples on the screen. El problema, la cosa, and the English equivalent, the problem, the thing. Notice that the is the same word for both examples in English, but in Spanish we have el and la. So the biggest difference that you're going to see between Spanish nouns and articles is the question of gender. In Spanish, all nouns have gender. Every noun is either masculine or feminine. So you're probably thinking, how do I know if a noun is masculine or feminine? Well, you can start by memorizing the guidelines presented in your study materials. These guidelines will tell you that depending on how a word ends, you can guess whether it's masculine or feminine. But of course, there are exceptions to those guidelines. Words that end in o, or, ma, or es are often masculine, and words that end in a, ora, sion, or dad are often feminine. But of course, as I said, there are exceptions. So you will see that even though these guidelines are helpful, you will also need to simply memorize whether a word is masculine or feminine. So really, it's a question of good study habits. Here's a few tips. When you memorize each new noun in Spanish, memorize it with its definite article el or la. That way, if it's el libro, you know that it's masculine because it has el. And if it's la capital, you know that it's feminine because it has la. And then you can make a list of exceptions somewhere in your notes of words that you think would be masculine but are actually feminine and vice versa, such as el día, el mapa, and la mano. Next, we need to talk about how to make nouns plural in Spanish. It's pretty easy. There's basically two rules and one exception. The first rule, if a noun in Spanish ends in a vowel, like libro, you simply add an s to make it plural, libros. If a noun ends in a consonant like capital, you add es to make it plural, capitales. And the one special case is when a noun ends in z. You have to change the z to a c and add es to make it plural, lápices, for example. And those are basically the rules for making nouns plural in Spanish. There is one special case that deals with accents. If a word has an accent on the last syllable, like autobús, the accent is lost when you make the noun plural, autobuses. And again, this only happens when a noun in its singular form has an accent on the last syllable. Another example is lección and lecciones. So now it's time for you to give it a try. Inténtalo. ¿Cómo se dice? How would you say the students, some books, the pencils, and some lessons? Go ahead and pause the video here so you can give it a try and try to think what the Spanish equivalent would be. And then when you're ready, hit play again and the answers will show up on the next slide. So here are the answers. Respuestas. Los or las estudiantes. Estudiante ends in a vowel, so you simply add an s to make it plural. It could be los or las because we're not sure if we're talking about a group of all female students or a group of both female and male students or a group of just male students. Unos libros. It ends in a vowel, so you can simply add an s. Los lápices. This is the exception, so you change the z to c and add es. Unas lecciones. This is another exception since lección loses its accent in the plural form because the accent was on the last syllable of the singular form. Now let's focus on articles. Articles in a nutshell. In English, we have the three articles the, some. The first thing you need to do is memorize the Spanish equivalent of these articles. So, the Spanish equivalent of the is el, la, los, or las. You're probably wondering, why are there four different versions of the? And again, it's because of the masculine, feminine, singular, plural issues that we deal with in Spanish. In Spanish is un or una. So it's obviously singular, so you just have to deal with masculine and feminine. Masculine would be un and feminine would be una. Some is a plural form, and the Spanish equivalent is unos for masculine and unas for feminine. Once you've memorized these equivalents, then you can basically use these words as you would use them in English. So if in English you would say the book, then you would choose to say el libro in Spanish. Or if you want to say some books in Spanish, you would say unos libros. Now it's time for you to give it a try. Inténtelo. ¿Cómo se dice? How would you say the woman, a notebook, and some maps? Again, this is where you can pause the video, figure out how you would say each item in Spanish, and then when you're ready, hit play again and the answers will show up on the next slide. So here are the answers. Respuestas. The woman is la mujer, a notebook, un cuaderno, some maps, unos mapas. Remember that mapa is masculine. Finally, preguntas. Any questions for me? Always feel free to email me if you have any questions when you're doing your online class activities. And my email is shown here. Hasta pronto!